All right. All right, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get going. How's everybody doing? Good?
Better because I'm sitting here.
Yeah. Hey, for somebody who's not as comfortable up here, you did a good job. Yeah.
We survived.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Is everybody having a good week? Clint's not here, so we can do whatever we want, right? We can have fun. Hey, if you have a copy of Scripture or if you want to get on your phones, I want to invite you to turn to Philippians chapter 2. We're going to look at some verses in Philippians chapter 2 here in a minute. Clint has been out this week. He and a lot of people in our church are gone to Branson for I just call them the varsity ministry. They're going on a little trip together, and they're having fun in Branson. And so Clint and his family are there. So me and Taylor have been here all week without him, and we've been having party. It's been a fun time. The power went out today, so we were having fun. He shaved his beard too. Have y'all seen Taylor? Taylor shaved his beard. Yes. He does. Yeah. He's got a mustache now, so very interesting. Philippians chapter 2. So tonight, Hadley and I are going to tag team, and we're going to be talking about service in marriage, and really more accurately, we're going to talk about humility within marriage and how service and humility both play into together, as well as unity. And so we're going to kind of tag team tonight. I'm going to take the first half, and we're going to go through some verses in Philippians chapter 2, and then she'll come up towards the second half, and we'll kind of do like a questionnaire reflection kind of thing. We'll talk through some questions, some things that we have learned over the last year or so since we've been married. So a little bit of history of Hadley and I's relationship. We actually met in Nacogdoches on a roof in the spring of 2021 on a mission trip, so that was fun. We met on a roof. Everybody had masks on, so we couldn't really see each other super well, but she was a hard worker. She was up there laying shingles, and that was pretty attractive. And so then we eventually met here at Holly Springs later that year. Yeah. In the fall of 21, we met here at Holly, and she didn't have a mask on. And then I thought, well, she looks way better without a mask than she does with the mask on. So we kind of built a friendship right there, and that friendship lasted a little while. We started getting to know one another a little bit, and early on in that friendship, we were having a good conversation. I was thinking, man, this may go somewhere. And in the middle of that conversation, she mentioned something about a boyfriend that she has who's from her hometown. I thought, dang, can't date her. She's got a boyfriend. And so, anyways, we were friends, and we grew in our friendship for a little bit. And then about a year later, on my birthday, actually, we were at an event together, and she told me that she broke up with her boyfriend. And so I thought, well, that's the greatest birthday present I could ever get. So it didn't take long after that. We started talking and hanging out, spending some time together. We ended up dating in early 2023, like in January. We dated for about 7.5 months and then got engaged in September. And then we were engaged for about 7.5 months and then got married in April of last year. So we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary on this last Saturday. So thanks. Yeah, that was fun. So we have moved pretty fast through the whole dating and engagement process. But I do want to say, before we dive in, that Hadley and I have only been married for a little over a year. And so there's a lot of things that we haven't learned or experienced yet, just because we don't have those numbers in our relationship, that I'm sure many of you have experienced. You know, you've been married for 5, 10, 20 years, and you have a lot of things that you've learned together and have experienced together. And while we may not necessarily be at that place, we're going to try to take it from a different perspective tonight. We're gonna try and not necessarily teach you something new, but hopefully just encourage you and kind of refresh your mind of some things about marriage, specifically with serving one another. If anything, I feel more qualified to tell you what not to do in the first year of marriage than I do anything else. But we're going to try and give you some encouragement from Scripture, and then just some things that we've learned over the last year to hopefully encourage you and refresh your mind about marriage. But if you do have anything, I'm going to give you a complaint pathway. If you have anything that you don't agree with what I say or you don't like what I say, you can email me. My email is clint@hsbc-texas.com, CLINT. So make sure you email all your complaints and disagreements to that email, and I'll email you back or not. One more thing for anybody in here that may be single. I want you to know that everything we talk about tonight is not limited to marriage. It's for every single one of us as believers and followers of Jesus. Humility, service, and unity are all really important parts of being a Christian in general, but they also are really important aspects of a marriage as well. And so while we may necessarily be looking at marriage tonight, just know that it's also just a thing for every single one of us, no matter what stage of life that we're in. It's always a Christ-like thing to be humble and to serve others and to be unifying. So before we dive in, I just want to ask you a quick question. This is really just for fun, just for Hadley and I's growth. But what do you guys as married couples like to do for fun? Like, what is y'all's, like, in the free time, in the downtime, we like to do blank?
Well, when you get grandkids, they solve all that problem.
Yeah, hang out with grandkids. They probably take away all your free time.
They fill up all that
Yeah.
void.
Yeah. All right.
We like to travel.
Travel? Yeah, that's fun. Okay, good. What else?
We enjoy going through, like, thrift stores and
Yeah.
seeing if you can find something that's really special.
Yeah, that's fun. Hadley loves that too.
Great clothes.
Yeah.
Cheap.
And it's cheap, yeah. That's the best part. What else? Camping. That's a good one. Cool. That's also cheap. All right. Anything else? What is everybody laughing at? Am I like missing something? Ah, okay. All right. Okay, let's move past that. Let's go ahead and dive in. I guess you guys don't have any fun. Okay, let's dive in. We're going to look here at Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. There's three main things that I think we can see out of these verses here. There's an exhortation to remain humble, there's an example of humility, and then there's an exaltation of humility. So we're going to look at those three things. First thing, we're going to look at the exhortation of humility. Let's look here at verse 1. It says, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind, doing nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others." So this right here in these 4 verses, Paul's giving an exhortation to be humble. And an exhortation is a way of communicating with extra importance, a strong urge to do something. And so it's like giving an encouragement. Like if I was to say, hey, I encourage you to go try Brendan's barbecue, that is a lighthearted suggestion or recommendation. But an exhortation, which would be more accurate, is to say, I strongly urge you to go try Brendan's barbecue, because that's how I feel about that, a strong urge. So an exhortation is a strong encouragement to do something. It's more of a plea than it is just a suggestion. And so Paul gives an exhortation to do 3 things, but all of them are encompassing the idea of having a humble heart posture and serving others around you. So 3 things that Paul says here is, first, he says, do nothing out of selfish ambition. And I think that the way that he phrased this, selfish ambition, is really important because ambition in and of itself can be a good thing. That ability to create good ideas and then that drive to carry out those ideas, that ambition is a good thing, especially in the confines of a marriage. But selfish ambition is what Paul exhorts us to do nothing out of. Bless you. So, Paul says that selfish ambition is not good. And I think that it's easy for us to fall into that mindset where we make decisions that may be more self-benefiting as opposed to mutually benefiting. But Paul is calling us to make decisions for the betterment of others and in our marriages for the betterment of our spouse as opposed to just ourselves. So the decisions that we make should be mutually benefiting and not just self-benefiting. And then the second thing that he says here is he says, do nothing out of vain conceit. And conceit it's just defined as thinking too highly of yourself. It's an excessive self-interest. And the word vain conceit is literally translated to mean empty glory. And so it's too much of thinking of yourself, because thinking of yourself is okay. Having some care for what you do, what you say, how you live, your well-being, like that's good. But vain conceit, thinking too highly of yourself, is what Paul says is not okay. And this would really be, this is the thought of, if it weren't for me, then blank. Or if I didn't do this, then blank. And if I wasn't there, then blank. And especially in our marriages, this can look like, well, if I didn't do the dishes, then they wouldn't get done. Or if I didn't take out the trash, then it wouldn't get done. Or if I didn't do blank, or if I didn't say blank, then it wouldn't have gotten done. It is a mindset that if we weren't present, then there would be an unfillable hole left in that spot. And Paul encourages us and exhorts us not to fall into that mindset. The reality is that in a marriage, I think we need each other in a marriage. I don't think that one person is designed to carry the weight of the marriage and the other person is just kind of like a spectator or on the sidelines or on the bench. It is both parties being actively involved in serving one another, valuing one another, pursuing one another. Both parties need each other. There are a lot of things in our marriage that I can certainly not do alone. I need Hadley for. And the biggest example that I could think of is Hadley is the health nut in our relationship. She likes to eat things with green in them, and she likes to spend time outside and all that stuff. And back whenever I was single, I would cook, my meal would be like some chicken breasts and some sausage or something like that, or a Taco Bell run. And that was kind of my diet, I guess. And, if I didn't go outside for a couple of days, I guess that would not be too out of the norm. But now that we're married, we eat food with green in it. And sometimes the green is the main part of the meal. Like, the protein is like a side, which is very different than what I'm used to. But it's good. I know that it's good. I've eaten more veggies in the last year than I have probably in all my years of life combined. So, yeah. If it wasn't for Hadley, I'd be on a Taco Bell ad by now, I'm sure, or something worse. So we need each other in marriage, and I think that all marriages need each other for certain aspects. Paul exhorts us to not do anything out of vain conceit. And then the third thing he says in here is, instead of a negative comment about do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, he gives a positive remark, he gives instruction, and he says, rather, value others above yourself. And so this is a call to value others above ourselves, to serve and to care for them. And in the marriage context, this looks like elevating your spouse above yourself and their needs and their desires above your own needs and desires. And I remember right before Hadley and I got married, one of the guys in my life that I'm close to, he said, while we were eating lunch, he said, the boy dies and the girl lives. And it just really stuck with me because I feel like it painted a picture of what marriage is supposed to be like, or at least the mindset that we move into marriage with. The boy dies and the girl lives. But obviously a marriage is mutually benefiting, and so no one is ultimately dying so that the other can live. Both parties in the marriage are having that mindset, and then both parties end up living through the process. Both parties are consistently laying down their own desires for the sake of the other person. To value Hadley in our marriage looks like coming home at the end of the day and taking a genuine interest in her day and the things that have gone on and doing what I can to support her through those things. And obviously, there's a number of different ways that you can value your spouse or just value others around you. Some things that it could look like is just actively listening in conversations, asking intentional questions, paying attention to the things that are important for them, celebrate their wins, be supportive of them, pray for them, choose their favorite things over your own favorite things, build them up, encourage them, help them, and most importantly, do their laundry, right? Yeah. She was hoping I would say that one. That's how she feels the most valued.
Yet to happen, so.
Yeah, it is yet to happen, but it will. Maybe year two. The beautiful thing about a marriage, I think, is that when both partners are practicing that valuing one another, then no one person is left dry and empty in the relationship. If both people are constantly trying to value one another, you're both getting filled up through the process, which is a beautiful thing because, I think that society and culture will tell you that, oh, you take care of you and they take care of them, and then you both just are taken care of together. But that's not the biblical picture. The biblical picture is you take care of them and they will take care of you. And there are some days that, even we've experienced this just in our first year, that some days I come home and I have like 10% to give. And there needs to be another 90% that's given, and she gracefully comes along and she provides that other 90%. And there's been days and seasons where she's been that way, where she can only bring 10%. And my charge is to give the other 90% to the relationship. So when one party is valuing the other party values back. It's a back and forth dynamic where you pour into your spouse and they pour back into you. Both partners are being filled up by the other. In these few verses right here, 1 through 4, the picture that I was thinking about as I was reading through this and studying through this, it's really like a triangle that Paul is trying to paint for us through words. He's saying that there's 3 aspects of this that are crucially important. The first is unity. If you imagine a triangle, unity is at the top. Unity is the goal. That's the destination of not only being in the church, the global-wide church, but also a marriage. Unity is the goal. That's the destination. And the way that you reach unity is by having a humble heart posture. So that's the other corner. You remain in a humble state of mind, a humble spirit. That's the heart posture of somebody who's seeking after unity. And the way that the humble heart posture presents itself in our lives, the practical application of that is service. And so if you have a humble heart posture, it's going to show itself by the way that you serve your spouse or serve those in the church. And if you're serving those in your marriage, or serving the one in your marriage and serving those in the church, then it leads back to unity. And it's just a constant cycle of unity, humility, and service. And I think that Paul is trying to say here in these 4 verses that those things are all go hand in hand. As you pursue unity, it requires a humble heart posture, and it looks like serving your partner. And that ultimately results back in unity. Humility leads to service, and service leads to unity. And then, in the next group of verses, we see the example of humility that Paul gives us. Let's look here at verse 5. Paul says, in your relationships with one another, including your marriage, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. Being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. So Paul says here that Jesus is the picture of humility. He's the epitome, the embodiment of humility, because the creator and ruler of the world has stepped off of his throne and into creation. And the important part of this is Jesus didn't just come into existence whenever it was his time to come into the world. Like, he didn't just appear. He wasn't created by God to come into the world, to live as a human, and then to die on the cross, and then his job is done. That's not who Jesus is in the Trinity. Jesus has always existed along with the Father and the Spirit. And more than just existing, he was glorified before he came down to earth. He was in a position of glory just as the Father and the Spirit are and were. And so by Jesus coming down to earth, it's not like he finally got up off the bench and came into the game. He came, out of the sweet box where he just won the Super Bowl, and he's coming back into the game to do his role, to fulfill his mission on earth, to set us free as his people. And so Jesus came into the world. He was born and he took on humanity. And the thing about that is he didn't substitute his deity or his godness for humanity. It's not like he left the deity in heaven and then he just took on humanity and now he's just 100% human. What he did was he added humanity to his deity. So he's 100% God and 100% man. And I have a reason that I'm saying all of this. He was 100% God and added 100% humanity to it. He didn't substitute those two things. He kept deity and added humanity to it. And the reason that I emphasize that and tell you that is because as a human and as God, Jesus was subject to human limitations. And so as humans, we experience things like getting sick or getting tired or hungry, or being thirsty, being sad, angry, or lonely. We're also limited to being at one place at one time, and we're also subject to death. Those are some of the human limitations that we experience. And just as we experience all of those things and are subject to them, so was Jesus, because he was human. He experienced things like getting sick or getting tired or being hungry or thirsty, getting sad or angry or lonely. He was limited to being at one place at one time, and he was subject to death as well. So just because he was God doesn't mean that he bypassed all of the inconvenient or uncomfortable parts of being human like we experience. And the reason that I say all of that is because it would have been so easy for him in his deity to just bypass all of that stuff with the snap of a finger. He could have said, I don't want to be hungry, I'm going to make a loaf of bread for myself. Or I don't want to be tired, I'm going to rest here. Like he could have just easily bypassed all of the inconvenient or uncomfortable parts of being a human, but he chose to go through all of them just as we do. And he did it strategically. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. This passage, verse 5 through 8, is known as the kenosis, which means emptying of oneself. And it's known as that because Jesus emptied himself by taking on humanity. He didn't empty himself of the abilities of God, but he emptied himself of the rights and the privileges of being God, being able to do as he pleases in the moment. He emptied himself of the rights and the privileges of being God. He chose to bear through the uncomfortable parts of being a human. And he did this because he wanted to be able to relate to us on every level. He was so humble that he was willing to experience all of the things that we experience as humans. And we see this in Hebrews 4, chapter 15, which says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin." And I found a list online of just a few of the things that Jesus did during his lifetime that I think really help paint the picture of Jesus's commitment to humility. And it shows the depth of his humility. It says, in humility, he took on the form of a helpless baby. In humility, he was born into a time of oppression and political tension in the world and for his people. In humility, as a child, he submitted to the authority of his earthly parents. In humility, he learned and practiced to be a carpenter. In humility, he waited almost 30 years to launch his public ministry. In humility, he chose cast-outs and rejects to be his closest followers. In humility, he never tried to keep a crowd and often purposely tried to teach to confuse them in the crowd. In humility, he chose Judas as one of his disciples, knowing that he would eventually betray him. And in humility, he allowed his own people to have him arrested. And in humility, he allowed a criminal named Barabbas to be set free in his place. And in humility, he took on the physical suffering of being crucified on the cross. All of those things he could have just bypassed, but he chose in his humility to encounter all of those things so that he could give us a picture of humility so that he could give us a representation of what it looks like, not just as a believer in Jesus, but as a spouse, as a godly spouse, to lay down your life, to be inconvenienced for someone else's betterment, for someone else's gain. And he knew that if he went through all of these things, not only would he do the amazing work of setting us free and providing us a way to be with him for eternity, but he would also paint a relatable and consistent, a permanent picture for anyone who is seeking to be humble, to have a humble heart posture. And Paul gives us this picture of Jesus, who was very fresh on these people's minds. This had just happened for these listeners, for these readers. So he gives this example to show them this is how you do this. This is what it looks like. Live like Jesus. So that's the picture, the example of humility. And then the last thing that we see in here is verses 9 through 11. We see the results of humility. We see the exaltation of humility. Let's look here at verse 9. It says, "Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every other name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father." So the beautiful pattern that's in these verses right here is in verses 6 through 8, Jesus lowers himself. He comes down into the world. He lives a humble life. And then verses 9 through 11, God exalts Jesus because of his humility. And this is a pattern that we see mentioned in other places throughout Scripture. Matthew 23:12 says, "For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." James 4:10 says, "Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up." 1 Peter 5:5 says, "In the same way, you who are younger, submit yourselves to your elders. All of you, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble." So we don't receive the same kind of exaltation, obviously, that Jesus received. We're not going to be the one who's in that position to where every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that we are Lord. That's not our exaltation. But I do believe that this pattern is still true for us. That if we put ourselves into a humble heart posture and value other people above ourselves, I believe that God exalts that. And that may look like God exalts the unity in your relationship with that person. And especially in a marriage, I think that if we and both partners put themselves in a humble position, then God will exalt them by letting them be unified together, and ultimately pointing more glory back to him. And in all of the marriages that I hear about and that I witness, even in our church, marriages that are thriving and flourishing, there's a common thread that's weaved or woven all throughout every marriage, and it's that both parties are pursuing one another with humility, with fervence, with passion. There's both people who are active in the relationship. Both people are not just receiving, but they're also giving. There's a common thread of people serving one another in humility, ultimately valuing one another. So that's all of Philippians 2. I do want to encourage you that if you ever get to a point in your marriage where you feel like you're in a dry spot, I would just encourage you to read through Philippians 2. Anything in the Bible would do, but especially Philippians 2 is just a good one to kind of anchor yourself into. Just because, I'll read these verses here about Jesus humbling himself, and it makes me just want to run through a wall. It just fires me up to be a better husband, to be a better believer. So I hope that was encouraging for you. I'm going to invite Hadley up, and we're going to kind of go through a few questions together. I've got 7 questions that I'll ask. We'll kind of tackle these together. Do you have answers for these?
We'll see.
Okay. We may be making it up on the spot. Yeah, we just wing it. Okay. All right, question number 1. Yeah, you'll answer.
Okay.
And I'll tag in if you don't do good enough.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Support.
Big part of our marriage is humor. Yeah, there it goes. It's all gone.
Yeah, that's true. Make
Oh,
you listen
no.
to it.
No. Okay. Okay, here you go. You ready? All right. What are some practical ways that we can serve each other in marriage, big and small?
Is this on? Hello? Is it on? Yeah. I think that for us, what we've learned a lot in this year. I can understand like why people say to you like, "Hey, the first year is the hardest," blah blah blah. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but it's definitely like trial by fire more rapidly because I've never lived with a boy before. Like I have all sisters, and my dad, but like to be living in a space with somebody where you're like having a mirror in front of you constantly where the Lord's showing you areas that you need to be sanctified in and where you're growing in is not fun. Like that's not a fun place to be in at all, where the Lord's like, hey, you're being arrogant, or hey, you're being selfish, or hey, you're not being a servant to your spouse or whatever. And so I think that that's why the first year is just different, because it is very rapid, and that's nothing that you've ever experienced before, where there's someone in front of you literally 24/7 to remind you of all the ways that you can be improving as a believer and as a spouse. So I think that with that being said, that you're not going to be able to serve your spouse well if you're not foundationally spending time with the Lord. And I think that, like, for me, I can tell whenever there's, like, we're not on the same page, or there's a disconnect, or there's, like, a flesh desire, like, on my part to be served or whatever, like, 9 times out of 10, it's because, like, I haven't been in the Word, or I haven't been praying. And then, like, before, when you're single, like, it's a little bit easier for that to, like, exist in the dark, because then there's not really as much accountability coming from that. But then, like, you didn't spend time with the Lord for a few days, and then there's some kind of inconvenience or difficulty that happens, and then that, like, rears its ugly head, like, immediately. And you're like, oh, I'm not equipped to be handling this right now, because I haven't been spending the time with the Lord in the way that I have been needing to. So I feel like, I don't know if that's a small one, because it's huge. It makes a huge difference, but it's just a really simple change, too. Like, if you're spending time with the Lord, then that is going to be the lens that you're viewing your marriage in, and you're going to be viewing your spouse in. And so I don't know if that is like a big or a small one, but I think it counts for both.
Yeah. You just like answered all 7 in one response. That was funny. That's a good one. That's good. I have a not as deep one to add to that. I think a way that you can serve each other is just identifying things that are important for each other. And so, like, I learned very quick that having coffee in the morning is an important thing for Hadley, which is not something that I was used to. And so, that, like, knowing that that's really important for her, a way that I can serve her is by waking up and making coffee for her.
Make it beforehand
Mm-hmm.
at night.
Yes.
And have it for it'll come on and be done before.
Yeah,
You know?
that's right. Do you have one that you can just, like, automatically?
We have one.
Yeah.
We have
Really?
one. Like, ours is automatic. You can just set it the night before.
What? What
Yeah.
do you mean it's automatic?
I mean, that's like,
No, I didn't know
I
that.
feel like that's common knowledge.
I thought you just press the button and then it does its thing. Man. Yeah. Yeah. You knew this all along?
I thought that was common knowledge. So
Man. Thank you.
that should not make you feel better.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes
Jay
you feel
is
much
the one
better.
that said he didn't know.
Oh, man. Well, that's good to know. I need to remember that. Yeah.
I know. Now I just have to press a button.
Yeah,
That, like,
that
takes
was
away
like
all
my
the-
one thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that like takes away all the.
Man. Yeah, that's right. I think that along those lines, another helpful thing, another good way that you can serve is initiating something that your partner also enjoys. Like, for example, like we have different tastes about just about everything, like
Yeah.
movies or hobbies or food.
Whenever we did premarital with Gary, like
Yeah.
where you take a test and Gary basically tells you if you like are gonna pass or fail as a couple, that was like our fail was that like we don't enjoy the same things like at all.
Yeah.
So Gary was like, "You're gonna fail in this area, just so you know."
Yeah, he's like, you might want to reconsider this. He didn't say that. But yeah, so we have different interests in different categories. But if I know that she likes, I want to barf just saying this, but if I know that if she likes rom-coms, then I'm going to put on a rom-com so that she can enjoy that movie. Anyways, initiating things that your partner enjoys, I think is good. Okay, second question. What are the results of sacrificial service and humility within marriage?
Austin and I, we use this phrase a lot with each other. I feel like almost every day. And it's, are we on the same page? We use that a lot as just a checkpoint for us. And if we're not on the same page, I feel like it's pretty evident. And one of us will just say that. We'll say and communicate out loud and say, there's something here, we're not on the same page, for whatever reason it is, small or big. And so I think that, there is a piece of humility that has to come to be able to just, name that, to say, I'm feeling it, you're feeling it, we're not on the same page. And then, once you say that out loud, and, sometimes Austin will say it, and I've been feeling it, but I just didn't, connect the dots yet that we're not on the same page, or vice versa. And so if you say that out loud, then you can actually be sitting together at the table with it in front of you on the table and say, okay, what is happening here? There's something happening, whether it's a missed expectation, or there's frustration, or maybe one of us just didn't have a really super great day, and that even itself can make it to where we're not on the same page with each other. And so I think that whenever we're seeking to serve each other and we're seeking to be humble, it doesn't mean that we're on the same page every single day, but it means that it's very easy for us to at least say that, right? Because we're seeking to be serving one another, and we're seeking to be humble. And so then even if we were having a crap day or whatever, it's easier to get back together and be back towards unity, because we've already been fighting for that all day or all week. And so it helps us continue to be on the same page.
You're saying that unity is a result of service and humility. Wow. It's good stuff, yeah. I think that another big result of sacrificial service and humility is, if you're operating in a state of mind that's humble, then it protects you from a prideful state of mind. And it may not be 100% proof, but I think that when you're so concerned about someone else's well-being and someone else's desires and needs, that it kind of distracts you from your own, in a sense. And I think that can be really beneficial to preventing yourself from hyperfixating on your own desires and needs.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen that too for us more in the past few months, as we've been navigating infertility. We've been really intentionally fighting for service and humility for one another. And I think that if you're going through a difficult trial, then you can very much tell whenever you're not fighting for service and humility, even more so, which is cool, because going through something that's hard gives more of an opportunity for service and humility. But that also means that when it's kind of sucks, it's more evident that you guys aren't serving each other. It's more evident that there's not a lot of humility growing in your home. And so I think that that's a really good learning area for us. It's the first major thing that we're kind of navigating through together. And so it's giving us more tools for how do we serve each other, and how do we stay humble and put the other before us whenever we're going through a time that's not all butterflies and rainbows and all of the things. So
Yeah, that's good. Okay, question 3. When was a time that we were led by pride instead of humility?
you should go first.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like there's the issue is not which one can I think of. It's which one do I choose out of the many different encounters. But I think that something that I do consistently, especially just in conflict, in times where we're disagreeing or have misunderstandings of whatever it is, I can be led by pride by just getting immediately and naturally defensive. If she comes to me and says, I didn't appreciate how you did this, or, whatever it may be. There's some offense there that I've done. And my natural instinct is to just say, well, that's not true, or you're overgeneralizing that, or, that's not fair. Like, I just immediately jump to the defense, which is not a humble posture whatsoever. And so I do that pretty consistently, I think. So I would say that.
That's nice to hear. I think in our really first few months, for some reason, I came in with this crazy expectation of myself and what a wife is supposed to be and what a wife is supposed to look like and what she's supposed to do, especially a pastor's wife. There was this very large expectation that I for some reason was just bringing into our first few months of marriage, which didn't turn out great because I was going above and beyond and burning myself kind of to make sure everything was done and all of the lists were checked off and we had everything that we need, and Austin was had free time to do whatever he wanted. I was working super hard, but it wasn't for a good reason. And so then I was keeping score a little bit, well, I did all of this, and Austin's not doing literally jack nothing, and so that did not turn out well for us at all. And I think that the space that came from was pride. I deserve for someone to be doing X, Y, and Z, and because I am winning at marriage, right? I should be getting more or whatever, if that makes sense. And so then it took some investigation to realize that it was from an expectation that I had on myself, because the first few conversations we had, it was literally just here's a list of all the things that I'm doing, what's yours or whatever. But then after we sat with it for a while, we realized that I was just holding myself to a standard that marriage is hard, and so you have to work hard because marriage is hard, but that wasn't the right humble expectation to have for myself or for Austin. It wasn't helpful for either of us, but I think it was all just based in pride. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Oh, man. I just remember thinking, I don't have a clue how to keep up with that pace. That was insane. She'd wake up early and get after it. It was crazy. Question 4. And I think you alluded to this question earlier, but we can do it anyways. The question says, in times that we may not be on the same page, what can we do to realign and seek unity?
I think you have to be able to tell, when you're not on the same page, and you have to be able to tell, when your partner, Austin was talking about earlier, when he comes home and there's only 10% in the tank left. I need to be able, he does need to be able to communicate that to me, but I also need to be able to tell that there is something happening and there is some disconnect. And so I think that that's step number 1 is to know your spouse and to be able to tell whenever something like that is happening and you're not on the same page, but then also what does your spouse like? What can I do to get us unified and get us back on the same page? But you're not going to know that about your spouse. You're not going to know how to do that if you're not spending intentional time connecting with them, and learning from them and communicating with them and all of those things that can for some reason fall to the back burner whenever you're doing life and it takes actual intentionality to connect with them and talk with them and have fun with them and all those things. But I think that actually sets you up for success to be on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one thing that is really helpful to kind of address misalignments or whatever it may be is openly just communicating and being honest about it and addressing it, bringing it to the spotlight. Because we had a moment the other day where we were just hanging out in Waco, and for some reason we're just not on the same page about whatever we were. I think we were trying to figure out where to go, what kind of pizza to order, and we were just not on the same page about it. But anyways, we ended up talking about it, and that kind of solved that issue. So it sounds super simple, but just openly communicating and addressing some sort of not being on the same page, I think is really helpful.
I think though too, our personalities, or mine at least, lends itself to just saying it. And I think that I've noticed in some other, even some of our college kids who are dating each other or people who are married, someone doesn't have that personality type to just be all right, like, I'm just going to throw it out there and say there's something off, right? Or I'm just going to say you frustrated me. Like, I'm just going to say it, you know? And so I think that that helps, and I think that there's definitely a way to do that in grace and humility, for sure, and there's a way not to do that in grace and humility that doesn't turn out well. But even if that's not your personality, to be able to just say how it is and just, like, put it out there and be completely honest about where you're at and where you think the other person is at, I think that is, like, really helpful for staying on the same page.
Yeah, I think that's good. Question 5, how do we stay intentional about serving each other when life gets busy?
I have heard this phrase, and I really, really like it, and it's about the Ephesians 4 chapter, about, like, what marriage is supposed to look like. The husband will lay his life down for his wife, and wife will submit to her husband. And there's this picture, and I've heard this phrase about it, and it's like racing to the back of the line. Like, what does it look like whenever you see kids who are, like, excited to go, like a classroom of kids, when they're, like, excited to go to lunch or recess, and they're all just, like, running to the front, like, you know, they want to get there first. But then, like, how do you flip that on its head and say, like, in our marriage or in our family, our future family, like, what does it look like to be with that same excitement and intentionality, like, racing to the back of the line? Like, how can I do everything I can for this person to encourage them and lift them up and have things that I can do for them that, you know, make them happy or rested or whatever. And so I think that there should just be, like, a mindset shift, and especially in, like, on Easter weekend, when you're face to face with, like, what Jesus did for you and, like, the gospel. I think that is, like, the easiest way to be like, okay, well, like, my problems are, like, so small compared to, like, what Jesus was willing to do for us, and, like, his character should be something that I should be trying to replicate. And I think that's, like, a gut punch to be like, I'm not doing that, or, like, I'm putting myself higher than what I need to be. But I think that's a good gut punch, right? To be reminded of, like, the gospel, and reminded of the picture of Jesus and the church, and the picture that's set up for marriage, and that really truly is, like, am I willing to lay down everything for this person that the Lord's placed me with? And I think having that mindset doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect at it, but at least sets you up where you're quick to understand when you're not doing that, and quick to find new ways to try to do that better.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think another way that you can be intentional about serving each other when life gets busy is just checking in often with each other, especially, like, we had a season a little bit ago where she was working a lot, working during the day, and then had things into the evening. And there were just some days where it was, like, very, very, very short amounts of time that we would get to talk and check in during the day. And I think that in those moments, it was really important to just say, is there anything that I can do to help you? Like, is there anything that I can take that off of your plate that feels like it's yours? Is there anything that I can do to help? Just making a habit of just asking really frequently. And I think, you know, like, Clint's not here, but I think that he's really good at that. Like, if you know Clint, he'll come around on Sundays or Wednesdays and check in on you and be like, hey, are you doing okay? Is there anything you need? He's really good about that. But yeah, so I think it's good. Second to last question, what are some obstacles to serving with humility?
I mean, I'm just selfish, honestly. I think, like, all people are selfish. And so, like, your instinct is not to be thinking of somebody else. Like, it's just not. And I think that is just, like, that's the problem. And that's why you have to learn, like, you don't have to learn how to be selfish, but you have to learn how to be humble, and you have to learn how to be wanting to serve someone. And I think that's what, like, this past year has been, like, learning how selfish you really are, and then learning how to improve in humility and improve in service. So I feel like, I mean, that, to me, that's just, like, I just don't want to, and I'm selfish. So.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, part of it is just entitlement. Like, I feel like I deserve to be served in a marriage. Like, that's how it's supposed to work. So she should be doing things to serve me or to value me. And so then sometimes it's easy to fall into that mindset of, well, if she's not serving me, then I'm not going to serve her. You know, like, if she's not sacrificing so that I can have blank or do blank, then I'm not going to do that in return. I think it's easy to fall into that mindset of entitlement. And just, of course, laziness is a big one, too. We try and be very aware to not fall into the mindset of just being roommates and just living together and kind of having different things that we each take care of for the house or whatever it may be, but being really purposeful to do things for one another that kind of like spur us on in our marriage. So I think that's big too. Last question, what are some ways that we can cultivate humility?
I think just thinking of myself less frequently is a really big practical one. And like the Lord is like really recently in this season for me, he's really been like pointing to a piece of my pride or my heart where I say that I deserve something, like where in my brain I feel like I deserve whatever it is, right? And so like that's what the Lord's been kind of like trial by firing out of my heart recently. But I think one of the cool opportunities that I have, because we are in ministry and we have college students who are hanging out with us and talking with us and coming to our house at like 9 o'clock at night and staying there for forever, like I have a really unique opportunity to get to speak highly of Austin to them, which I think is really practical. Because they always, I don't know, they just want to like talk to us about our marriage, or they want to come and tell me something stupid Austin did or whatever, which is fine. But like I get like a really awesome opportunity to be speaking highly of him to them all the time, and I think that everyone should be doing that. Like any chance you get to talk to anyone about your spouse, you should be like raving about how amazing your spouse is and like these characteristics that you love about them or those kinds of things, because saying it out loud is huge. Like, I mean, we do that a lot in like the counseling space, like to say something out loud like gives it more substance and more power. But to be talking with somebody else and be able to just like brag about your marriage and brag about your spouse is a huge way where you're not thinking about yourself anymore, you're just thinking about them.
Yeah. You guys should test that theory. Come ask her after how good of a husband I am, see if she backs it up. I think a big way to cultivate humility is having other incredible versions of the spouse that you want to be in your life that you can look to. And it's easy for me because I'm so young that there's a lot of guys, especially in our church, that are just incredible husbands that I can look to that give me great ideas of what it looks like to practically serve, what to do whenever you encounter X, Y, and Z obstacle, what to do with that. So I think that's important to have people in your life that you can look to give you like a clear picture of what this looks like. Okay, with just a few minutes left, let's run through some of these first year reflections. So I think the first 5 are mine, so I'll kind of run through those real quick, and then you can finish the rest off. These are things that may be redundant to you, things that you've known for decades, but these are things that I think that I and we have both kind of realized over this last year. So first for me, that marriage is not designed for independence. I've always been a really independent person growing up. Like I wanted to make my own decisions, wanted to do my own thing on my own time. Even when I got to college, that was my dream because I was finally independent. I could eat whatever I want. I could watch whatever I wanted. I could do whatever I wanted. I had so much independence. And so moving into marriage, that was not a fun habit to try and break and not a healthy mindset for me to operate in. And even now, like there will be a lot of things that I still claim independence on. Like this is my thing. I really like to do this, but obviously that's not what marriage is designed for. Second thing is, I think it's important to prioritize time to enjoy each other's hobbies. So, like I said, we have very different interests. I like to do things that she doesn't like to do.
You like to do nothing.
No.
Yeah.
No. I like to rest, but
That's nothing.
I like to go outside. I like to play disc golf. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and while disc golf may not be her favorite hobby, sometimes she'll go out with me and we'll play together. And that's really fun. I think it's important to do each other's hobbies like that and share that time together. And I've learned that it's not just important to do the hobby with your spouse that you may not enjoy, but it's also important to have the right attitude about doing that hobby. Yeah. Dare I say more important. The attitude is more important than just the act. Yeah. Oh, man. Another important thing, I think, is to lean into your spouse's differences. So obviously, like I said numerous times, we're very different in a lot of different areas. And I thought that originally this would be like a really big challenge or hurdle for us to figure out how to deal with these differences. But honestly, a lot of the differences have been really good and really helpful for us, I think, because there's a lot of things that I don't think about and a lot of things that she does. And so she, like in a lot of ways, she serves as like those, what are those things whenever you bowl, like those like gutter pipes, you know? She's like that for, I don't know, my bowling game. I don't know. She's my guardrails is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Man.
Mark was like, I don't know what you're talking
Yeah. Yeah. Put down the shovel. Fourth thing for me, I think that another thing that I learned is what's important to your spouse should also be important to you. So it's really easy because of that independence, it's easy for me to just fall into like, I've got these things in my mind that are the most important thing. And so those are the things that we talk about. But there's a lot of things that are really important to her that we have to talk, or that we should be talking about, because what's important for her is important for me. Like I said, I learned the first morning that we were married that coffee was extremely important to her. And a big breakfast was
Yeah,
important.
we went out of our way, like on a 14-hour drive to go get said coffee and breakfast.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So I learned that was very important, and so therefore it's also important to me. So, and then the last thing I learned is just kind of what I was saying a minute ago. I think that it's important to learn as much as you can from other couples around you that have gone through things that you haven't gone through, or have gone through things that you've gone through. Just them being able to pour into you and teach you things. Everybody except Mark, that is. You can't take Mark's advice. But I'm just kidding.
I'll go through these really fast because a lot of these are kind of repetitive. So like most things aren't really that important in the long run. Like I don't know, I have just like really big feelings about everything, and so that can make something feel like this is the most important thing that is happening ever. But then a week later, it's like, what were we even arguing about, or what was I even upset about? And so like keeping that mind space of just like, is this actually like life altering, or is it just something small? And so I feel like that's something that I've learned. And then like the 7 and 9 are kind of the same. Like it's easy to go into marriage and be like, oh, this is so fun and so cool, and it's going to be great to have somebody who's there for me and supportive of me. But that's not the biblical design of marriage. Like literally the Bible says, like you're going into marriage so that you can serve somebody else and so that I can sanctify you. And I don't know how I missed that, like, leading up to marriage, but I did. And so then it was like, oh, well, this is kind of harder, you know, like, than what I was anticipating. But that's, like, the whole design of marriage is for the Lord to sanctify you and for the Lord to use you to be serving your spouse and not the other way around. And then, like, learning to recognize, just, like, learning your spouse and, you know, what they need and what they enjoy and all of those kinds of things. And then that marriage is fun because I had, like, I don't know why, but I had, like, the marriage is hard, so you have to work really hard at it, you know, like, you gotta be really serious and you gotta do all the things. But, like, marriage is a gift, and it's for your enjoyment just as much as it is for your sanctification. And so I think that is, I don't know, I think marriage is really fun. I really love it, and I would recommend to anybody, so, honestly.
I hope that with all these things that we share, that you never hear us coming from a point of, or from a place of, hey, we got it all figured out, or, you know, we're a year in and so now we're experts in any form or regard, because that's not true. I feel like we've just like constantly learned, okay, that's not what I thought was right. Okay, that's not what I thought was right. We're trying to get our bearings, so to speak. So I hope that some of this may be helpful for you in your marriage. If not, I hope that it's helpful for your spiritual walk, because ultimately that's important as well. I'd love to pray for us real quick, and then we can head out here. Lord, thank you so much for today. God, I thank you for giving us a chance to be together and to get to talk through marriage over the last few weeks. God, I thank you for all the marriages in our church and the beauty of them and the good works that you've done through them. And I pray that for all of our marriages in here and in our church, that God, you would continue to strengthen them. God, give us grace for one another. Give us forgiveness and mercy for one another. Would you give us courage and boldness to address situations head on? And I pray that you would, above all, just give us love for one another, that we can serve one another in humility and value each other above ourselves. ultimately pointing back to the love and the value that you have displayed for us, God, the way that you lived your life in humility so that you could give us a clear picture of what that looks like. Lord, I pray for all of us that you would help us to continue to be humble and to be unifying and servants for others around us. God, we love you so much. We pray all this in your name. Amen.